This community is known as the Hill by most people, but it also has a formal name. It's the Junaluska Community. The Hill rises above downtown Boone and has been the home of the Junaluska Black community for nearly 150 years. And although it's visible from the old post office, the old Farmer's Hardware store, the downtown Mass General store, and the Watauga Public Library, the Hill is too often invisible to the residents and visitors of this town. Like with me, I didn't know it was here. On Saturday, April 21st, today, we are doing our inaugural ceremony to commemorate this wonderful community, and especially Reverend Rhonda Horton. The first honoree of our celebration then is the late Reverend Rhonda Horton. Horton was instrumental in the development of the community's identity with the Boone Mennonite Brethren Church, which today is the social and spiritual heart of the broader Junaluska community. Reverend Horton was born April 27, 1895 to June and Betty Grimes Horton. He died June 23, 1986 at the age of 91. He began working at the age of 14, driving a wagon and team to transport produce to nearby towns, according to his obituary in the June 25, 1986 issue of the Watauga Democrat. He helped build the old Highway 60 in the 1920s, and he worked the Toms Creek, Virginia coal mines in the 1930s. In the 1940s, he started his own business selling coal and ice. After joining the Mennonite Brethren Church of Boone in 1920, Reverend Horton was ordained as a minister in the church, and this was 1934. At his ordination, the Reverend Peter Siemens said, "Brother Rhonda is a real Mennonite, true to God, a good speaker, and a Bible scholar. He is a serious Christian, has a good character, is a conscientious preacher, and an industrious man who keeps his word and promises, and is an example for the people." And so began his beginning here as the minister that he would become. Horton was elected moderator of the 6 Mennonite Brethren churches that make up the North Carolina District Conference, and retained that position until his death in 1986. The Reverend Horton was very serious about his Christianity and had a very beautiful side. He had charisma, loved to laugh, was devoted to the community and its people, said Carolyn Grimes, Horton's Titus. And Carolyn is still here. Many of us know and love her as one of our church leaders. His legacy is that of being a leader by example. We need someone like that now. Following are excerpts from an interview with Reverend Horton conducted by Winston Kinsey in 1973. Transcripts are available from the W.I. Urey collection at Appalachian State University's Belk Library. These are just comments on Boone. We got a good place to live in, Boone. Always has been, but it has changed a lot. I was born in Boone. This is my home, my birthplace. Lived here all my life. The house I was born in, was on a street called the Back Street. It's called Queen Street now. I don't know if they even had street names back then. They had one street they called Main Street, King Street now. They had a street toward Appalachian, and that was just a short street that came down by the bus station. That was called Short Street. North Street was just called a lane. All the rest of the land around here was farmland, pastures, and corn patches and playgrounds. Main Street was just a muddy road, no pavement, and the sidewalk was plank. There were stores called the Backwoods Store, and Mr. Green had a store too. Just 4 or 5 little stores, that's all we had. These were his comments on housing. The house I was born in was called the Coffee House. It had 1 room. It was maybe 14 feet one way by 24 feet the other way. We cooked and ate and slept in the same little room. We didn't have a cook stove. We had a big fireplace though, and we cooked on it. The winters were cold and the snow would blow through the cracks, but it was all right. Comments on work. When I was a boy, the boys worked. They didn't play all the time like they do now. If our parents told us to do something back then, we didn't bring up any arguments about it, we just did it. Wages were very low, even for the time. Boys, when we worked, we got a quarter a day. My dad got 50 cents a day. And we worked from sunrise to sunset. We worked a lot in the summertime. During the winter, there wasn't much to do, but we would clean up some to make a living on. We didn't have any money and mighty few clothes, but we managed to have a lot to eat. On justice and equality. Talk about the awful spirit of people. Well, at the Blair Family Hotel, they kept a lot of schoolboys. Those boys would pick on black people. There were cold days, and those boys would have a bucket of cold water up on the porch, and they'd throw it down on the colored people that walked by. Once there were 3 men staying there, and they got that awful spirit of the people. I was just a little boy. It was about dark. And as I passed those 3 men, one of them turned and kicked me. It hurt me badly. Hurt my feelings. And for a long time, it gave me a bad feeling. I made a resolution that if a white man ever kicked me again, I'd get me a gun, find him and kill him. That stayed in my life for years, till I was a grown man, till I'm grown up, a settled man. A lot of things like that have given people a bad feeling and caused hatred to grow in people. It did in me, but the Lord took that away from me. On military service. I went to work in the coal fields a number of years before I went to the mines. The crews were both black and white, about half and half. The foreman was white. They didn't have unions then, but we got along. I worked there for 9 years. I was working there when I was drafted into the Army, but I didn't stay long, just a few months. I was in a segregated unit. One day the Army called me into the office and asked if I'd ever worked for Virginia Iron, Coal, and Coke Company. I said yes. They said, would you go up and work there if you were out of the Army? I said, well, yes. I'd like to go up home and visit with my people before I go back. 4 days later, they called me back in, and I was discharged. I was in the Army for 90 days. Pretty good. On the Mennonite Church, the Mennonite Brethren missionaries came up to Boone. They wanted to do some mission work here. The Mennonites were never segregationists. They bought a school over in Avery County, a church school, and they started their own school, an integrated school. They were told they couldn't do that. It wasn't proper. The school, which was also an orphanage, was for whites or blacks, whites and blacks. But the law of the land told them that it could only be for whites or blacks, not both. The Mennonites felt the black children needed it worse, so they made it for black children. I attended that school even though I wasn't an orphan. They started a Mennonite Brethren Church here in 1917 on Church Street in Junaluska neighborhood, the Boone Mennonite Brethren Church, the only historically black church in the county. The comments on Saturday's Jubilee, of course, follow, and that's what we're here for, the Jubilee. This was a wonderful band who left quite a legacy, and if you get a chance to follow up on the suggestion to read more of the history of this community, then follow whateve's available at the collection at Appalachian State University's Belton Library. It's called the W.L. Urey, E-U-R-Y collection, and you may find more about it there. But thank you again for being here to celebrate this great man.